Kia ora, g'day, welcome back once again, here with, this should be part 4, and we're up to Count Nikolai Tolstoy for We Will Fight for Queen and Country. So his response, rebuttal, whatever the word is, in relation to Mr. Ben Griffin, ex-22 SAS, who just spoke for We Will Not Fight for Queen and Country. So let's jump into this one.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, the 1933 debate caused great distress, but whether it caused quite as much as we now are told is doubtful. Even Winston Churchill, who obviously disapproved of pacifism and defeatism in 1933, could only come up with the fact that a friend of his, Lord Lloyd, had been told that Mussolini had pondered the debate seriously. Well, whether Mussolini's intervention mattered very much to any of us, I doubt. I can't really contradict what we've just heard because, of course, it's something that everybody agrees with. War is hell. Many things change from the moment war is declared for particular reasons obtaining at the time. War itself changes everything.
And that's, I guess, what I've heard so far. It would be brave of this fella to challenge what an ex-22 SAS operator has lived firsthand, but also I haven't really. I think again, I'm still with the we will not fight for Queen and Country, based on that's not what people are fighting for, in my experience, and a lot of the people that I know. Like, I don't know anybody personally that has, like I've said repeatedly in some of the other reactions, that they're deploying, that they're going on this deployment for Queen and Country. And so they haven't, I'm not hearing this side saying we will fight for Queen and Country address their arguments in terms of trying to show that that is why we go. It's not. That's my take anyway, my very simplistic take. But anyway, this guy's got about 13 minutes, or just under 14 minutes, so let's see what he has to say.
These are truisms which I imagine every sensible person accepts. But what I don't accept is that all wars are wrong, or indeed in human history that all of everything is either right or wrong. It's far, far more complicated than that. And I certainly don't accept, for example, the fantasies of history which suggest that the Great War was fought for nothing except for a few arms merchants to benefit themselves. They've obviously not studied how the Germans behaved when they entered Belgium. They've not studied what happened when von Falkenhayn annexed Romania. They've not understood. Have you studied these things? That's my question, because that's what I'm talking about. You have, I take it.
I'd like to ask about the conduct of Belgium at the time in the Congo, which is always forgotten about.
I can't get taken off into digressions like that. Obviously, it's wholly irrelevant. It happened well before the Great War took place, and the Great War had nothing to do with the Congo. There's a whole chapter, but
just that interaction in and of itself is impressive to me. The respect shown both ways, in which this gentleman, what's his title? Count Nikolai Tolstoy, paused and acknowledged that Ben Griffin had something to say or wanted to, and asked him, "Oh, have you studied that?" But no, Ben Griffin had a question about something else he'd like to ask, whatever that question was, and he allowed him to ask that. But then he didn't call him a twat or anything like that. It was just that exchange is surprising to me. It was just good. Hence why I said, I can't remember which reaction I said it, and maybe it was part 2 of this series of videos. Why can't they communicate like this in Parliament House? Like everywhere, UK, Australia, New Zealand, like wherever they supposedly have these educated people get together and stand up and speak and or ask questions. Why can't they answer questions honestly, for starters, and directly? And why can't they just communicate with a bit of respect towards each other, like what's happening here? I don't know. This is Parliament houses around the place should study, I guess, and or pay attention. Is what comes to mind with this. It's cool.
But more importantly is that people then did not share the wonderful views in films like "Oh, What a Lovely War." The people who fought the Great War, of course, you can't generalize that much, but the fact is that in general, people were prepared. Indeed, they couldn't have fought for 4 years unless they believed that it was a war that needed fighting. And we had to fight Prussian militarism. Otherwise, France would definitely have gone under. Russia would have collapsed.
Yeah, that's a point. I mean, they're still there fighting because they believe, and people would have still been signing up because, you know, they believe and they want to get in the fight. But again, I'm not hearing, and, you know, like you said, you can't speculate or guess in terms of why they're getting into it. But I don't know. Are there records that show, were there interviews conducted after, if this initial debate was held in 1933 and the majority voted, I forget the term that was used in the first speaker, and the majority voted for we will not fight for Queen and country, then did they take surveys and studies after? It seems like they're just talking about at this stage that war is bad, which it is, and that not all war or going to war is bad, is what this guy's talking about and what I've heard so far. And I tend to agree with that, you know. Looking to stop a tyrant like Hitler and or blinking Stalin and I think you mentioned Mussolini and whoever else these other blinking tyrants are around the world. I think there's likely some good reasons to go and intervene. But I'm not hearing the argument for these people here, for this gentleman on his side, saying or presenting a very good argument saying that we will fight for Queen and country.
That's next. And we'd have been faced across the channel with an almighty jackbooted power which would be determined on attacking Britain next. We effectively had no choice. Belgium, of course, being neutral, we acted honorably because we'd guaranteed Belgian neutrality in 1839 and were prepared to fight for it. But of course, that was not the prime reason for the war. The war was fought because Germany was an almighty aggressive power, no less than it was in World War II. In World War II, of course, Germany piled on further iniquities to its record, and we had all the more reason to fight. But what I'm saying is we're not here to study particular wars, but all wars, of course, are different. But the motion of the idea of fighting for Queen and country, of course, is being taken grotesquely over literally by the other side. Of course, people go in. When I joined the army in long distant days, we didn't hate the Soviet. Well, I hated the Soviet Union, but I don't think any of my friends did. They hated. We were quartered at Weems Barracks in Canterbury, and they hated the Inniskillen Dragoons and the East Surreys and the Royal Fusiliers who were quartered with us a great deal more. I don't think they even thought about the Soviet Union. And of course, when soldiers are in battle, some behave badly and cruelly, some behave chivalrously. They become involved in terrible things. Some behave disgracefully towards civilians. All these things happen. So we all know, we don't need to be told, it's obvious that war is a cruel, horrible thing. But sometimes the war has to be fought. Obviously, the last war had to be fought unless somebody can seriously think that we'd have been better off under Nazi occupation. I don't think anybody who actually was living under Nazi occupation would share that view. And their view, of course, I should have thought they were entitled to hold. And again, a sort of strange diatribes against the poor Duke of Edinburgh, who actually fought in the last war very, very bravely against an iniquitous enemy, who then makes chance odd remarks. I couldn't see that any of them was that evil. He seemed to be treated as if he were a war criminal, but we were all denounced for the remarks.
I think is that in regards to the first speaker, I'm speaking, we will not fight for Queen and country. Yeah, I mean, we all say silly stuff, stupid stuff, lighthearted stuff, some stuff that may be inappropriate. I know I have. I know I probably will continue to. If this guy's saying that it seemed like he's been treated like a war criminal, I didn't take it that way. I think, the audience there was laughing, but maybe this guy took exception to what was being said about the Duke of Edinburgh, which is fair enough. He's probably mates with them, and that's probably why as well. But yeah, there's probably, I don't know what value those comments gave other than thinking of what the first honourable speaker spoke about and saying that they show that he's human, like he's just a normal person, fallible and whatever else he said. Maybe he didn't say fallible, but you know what I mean. like makes mistakes, imperfect, essentially, and just like anybody else. I'm still not hearing on either side, really, not specifically addressing the points in and around we will fight for Queen and country, we will not fight for Queen and country. I'm not sure what they're trying to convince us of. Yeah, war is bad. They both conceded that. And that's probably the main part that I've heard so far in terms of them aligning and or their messages being similar. If it's a debate, I would have thought there would have been more, I don't know, more prominence given to what it is that they're trying to get across. At this stage, my position still hasn't changed from the first part in regards to what I heard, agreeing with Ben Griffin and his crew. I'll say his name because it's the easiest one to remember out of the "we will not fight for Queen and country." But anyway.
Marx made constant contacts with members of the public and having to dream up something to say, we'd all probably be imprisoned too, but I don't think we'd deserve it. Pacifism is not the answer. It is obviously fighting for peace and extolling peace is very important, and we should, but peace isn't an abstract that can be achieved like that. It has to be achieved by practical purposes, as my friend Rory Stewart.
Has to be achieved through force, is a comment that I've heard before. Can't remember where I heard that, but yeah, words to that effect. Peace is only achieved through force or use of force.
But said, we take recent occasions. There are wars, some wars quite wrong. I don't need to be told by the other side that the invasion of Iraq, supported by initiated by Blair and strongly supported by Cameron, was, in my view, too, an iniquitous war. It was not fought for honourable reasons. It was not fought for anything that affected the interests of this country. It caused untold and cruelty and suffering, and still is doing so. The war in Afghanistan, it seems to me, is perfectly similar. That our troops should be sent out. And indeed, how many of our politicians, did you and Blair join the army? How many of our politicians have actually got sons serving in the armed forces? I remember the film about Michael Moore about the invasion of Iraq, and he actually stood outside Congress with a microphone interviewing congressmen and representatives, saying, have you got a son in the military? Not one in the film could answer. They're pretty careful. That wasn't always the case. Certainly in the Great War and the World War II, if you polled the House of Commons or the House of Lords, even more perhaps, you'd have found that, I guess I haven't got the statistics, that a majority had their sons serving. Many people who'd served in the Great War, one forgets how close together they were, served again in the Second World War. They weren't people like Field Marshal Alexander. They didn't love war. I remember Nigel Nicholson telling me he'd been intelligence officer in the Coldstream Guards, and he was came up holding an advanced post in North Africa, and suddenly a jeep drew up with a cloud of sand, and out stepped the Field Marshal Alexander himself with a couple of staff officers, and he came up, and near them was lying the corpse of a dead German. And Alexander looked, and he looked at Nigel Nicholson, and he said, "War's a dirty business, isn't it?" Well, Alexander had fought with the Irish Guards right through the Great War. He was so brave that it was said that his soldiers would step in his footsteps because they felt he was invulnerable and that they would be safe if they did the same. These people didn't go into war blindly. Okay, no doubt there were. Obviously, you can't fight a war without armaments, and some of the dealers in arms are no doubt thinking about profits. I'm sure they do. But to say that is only why wars are fought is just to fly in the whole face of history and of human experience. Who are these cynical people, usually played by Claude Rains in pre-war films? Do you actually meet people? They exist, I know, there are cynical people, but most people have much more complicated motives than that. Sometimes we have to fight a war. That we fight it in the name of Queen and country, obviously, is a convention. It's actually, in the case of the monarch, it's a very convenient convention. You have to have someone in whose name war is declared, for example. I think I'm right in saying that we didn't declare war in Iraq or Afghanistan, did we? We went aggressively to war without doing it, which is yet another reason why there was such appalling, in the case of Afghanistan, such appalling wars. troops are still being sent out to be killed. I totally agree with what the other side is saying. But they don't fight literally for the Queen. Some people probably would. When I was joined the army, it was at the year of the coronation. I think.
So is he just agreeing with the "we will not fight for Queen and country"? Like when he's saying, yeah, some people don't fight for the Queen. Like, I'm confused. Seems like he's conceding that I believe to be a fact. I've not done any studies or got any statistics on it because it's not a thought or question that's ever come to my mind until I got the request to do a reaction to these videos. So here I am doing a reaction to it. But it would be interesting. I guess probably a simpler way, rather than having these debates. I don't know how much they cost for starters, how long they take to organize, all the sort of stuff that goes on with it. Wouldn't it be simpler to just run a poll? Like, put up a poll online and then just go, unless they're worried about all the bots, blinking, spamming the thing or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like there could be better ways and easier ways of getting to or finding out whether there's more or less for or against we will fight for Queen and country or we will not fight for Queen and country. That's how it sort of seems like in my simple brain anyway.
I wasn't alone in being desperately in love with the Queen. She was very beautiful. And I can remember when I was a simple private of the Buffs, in my tin cupboard by my bed, I'd fallen in love at 18 every other week with a different film star. And there was a lovely one called Anne Vernon, French girl, who was with a film I'd seen with David Niven. So I had a lovely...
I'm just not... I'm not understanding where this fella's going with sharing his love interests for this debate.
Picture of her inside. Corporal Martin opened the cabinet, saw this. He said, Private Tolstoy, you're not allowed to have that there. You're not allowed pin-ups. Take it down. So I did. But then about a fortnight later, I'd fallen in love with the Queen. So I cut out a picture out of Illustrated and put that in there. And Corporal Martin noticed the door was closed. So he said, open it up. When the inspection came, I opened it up and he looked at the picture of his commander-in-chief. And he looked at me and he said, you're bloody cunning, Tolstoy. Well, I wasn't really cunning, like most people then. I was fond of the Queen, but we were being trained, obviously. Britain had a colossal army then. We were being trained for potential war. My friends older friends had been fighting in Korea. I think of a necessary war, probably that one. But we fought for these other things. But you have to have some symbol. And a monarch who has not played any part in provoking the war in general terms. I never heard that King George VI helped to provoke World War II, or King George V provoked the Great War. You need a symbol. And what better symbol than one who was not chosen by popular vote and who's one of a political faction, but one who represents the entire nation and its history. In our case, the Queen's ancestors go right back, famous through history, to the time of Alfred.
Just run a poll and ask your people. If you were ask all the Defence Force serving people first, and then maybe go to civvies or whatever, or just do it all together, one hit, one shebang, I don't know. If you were to fight, if you were to deploy to a war zone, would you do so for Queen and country, or would you be doing so for some other reason and just have those two options there? Maybe word them better than than how I've just worded the two options for the poll. And then I think that will probably help solve this debate. There's always going to be, like, on a larger scale, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, and there'll be little pockets and individuals, etc., that will have different opinions. But if you just ran a poll, maybe just start with the military and get a sense of, where they're at. I don't know, to maybe keep everybody feeling safe and secure, maybe run it as an anonymous poll so people can feel safe to vote honestly. Why you'd need to do an anonymous poll for something like that, it's just beyond me. But apparently that's a thing that happens, running anonymous surveys and that sort of thing so that people can feel safe enough to tell the truth. which is just trucking ridiculous to me. But anyway, let's get back to this.
Great, and even earlier. And this is part of our shared history. It doesn't belong to any political party. If a political party boasts that the Queen belongs to them, they'd be shot down in a trice. The same with our country. We have a vision of our country, but it's a rather vague vision, which varies from person to person. But nevertheless, I had occasion, my military career was brief and inglorious, but writing several books about the last war, some 20 or 30 years ago, I had to interview hundreds of British soldiers of all ranks who had served in that war. I was interviewing them to find specific information about what I was writing about, but I encouraged them to speak about their experiences in general. And in general, their feeling was that they'd fought a good and just war. And I remember one chap here, I forget his name now, he was a senior man in the Forestry Commission when I interviewed him, and he said, I remember, people often say war is hell. Well, he said, it is hell, of course. He said, I fought right through from 1939 to 1945. But actually, I have to tell you, I rather enjoyed it. I mean, we were comrades, we had the exhilaration, we felt we were doing a good job, a necessary job for our country. He said, there were only 2 times when I actually felt horror that I recall. One was when I was the first British officer with his unit to enter Belsen. And the other was a year later when I was detailed to send a group of Russian refugees in a camp to send them back to the Soviet Union, where I and my commanding officers knew perfectly well that they would be thrown into gulag camps and die miserable deaths. So we're not at all justifying iniquitous wars. In fact, we would oppose them. The war may be, no one can hold.
I heard that first ding of the bell before, about a minute ago. Now he's got 2 ding-dings. Does that mean he's gone over time?
The Queen responsible for the horrors that go on in Afghanistan or did go on in Iraq. Our lovely politicians, Cameron and Blair, made no attempt to declare war. They violated the Geneva Convention on every side. But how this can be laid and blamed on devotion to Queen and country, insofar as that plays a realistic part, I simply can't understand. In 1933, there was, as I recall,
I was about to pause before because I saw her reaching over and I was thinking, is she going to be hitting the bell again? It's like, come on, mate, you need to wrap it up, cuz.
Similar debate held in the Cambridge Union, of which my father was president at the time. He was not very keen on the communists and pacifists.
Points deducted, votes deducted for that, mate. You got 3-4 bells now.
Pacifists who were there, fairly prevalent, as one tends to forget now, in the 30s, and certainly were in the debate here in 1933. But then, of course, he'd actually escaped from Russia. He knew what was going on there, where gradually.
I think at this stage he's lost most people in the room with regards to his argument, if that's what it's called, his speech. He hasn't swayed me at all. Neither of the first 2 speakers for the "We will fight for Queen and country" haven't swayed me from my decision. Surprised that I came to a decision so quickly, actually, just based on the little bits that I was hearing. But the more and more I hear of this discussion or this debate go on, the more the stronger I feel in my original decision to be sitting with the side that is saying we will not fight for Queen and country. Anyway.
Stalin was beginning to kill millions and millions of people. And this was total pacifism is not the best approach. Indeed, I'll end by quoting, which many people will be familiar with, Hilaire Belloc's little distich. Pale Ebenezer thought it wrong to fight, but Roaring Bill, who killed him, thought it right.
All right, we'll pause that one there. And I don't really have much else to say. This one's gone on long enough. I don't know what people think in terms of their thoughts around fighting for Queen and country. I'd be interested to hear it and to know. I think there's just a simpler way, Just run a poll and canvass your military and get a sense of where they sit, what they think about it. Anyway, we'll come back for the next one.